All right, everybody. Happy Super Bowl Sunday. Whenever it is that you listen to this, the Boston Celtics go down to South Beach. They complete a season series sweep. Say that again, a season series sweep of the Miami Heat. We're going to break it all down for you. Coming up next here on Green with Envy. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy, post-game recap edition. The Boston Celtics complete a season series sweep of the Miami Heat. Celtics 110, Miami Heat 106. This is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? And oh, what a joy it is today. We get a matinee special. So you know what that means. My podcasting cousin from across the pond, able to catch this in live time, join us directly off the rip at the end of this game. You know who it is. It's the leader of the Taylor Gang, the lead writer from Celtics blog, the one and only Adam Taylor. What's popping?
I saw a matinee win. You know how rare it is for me to watch a fucking Celtics game in the daytime and it be a win. Like, so I'm living right now, man.
I'm glad they got a win for you, because I know it's not always the case, right? And I do feel like it was a couple of years ago the Celtics went through a really rough stretch of just every matinee was like chalk it up as well. I think it's gotten a little bit better, but I know that there is some residual scar tissue with Celtics fans that it feels like, you know, matinee games just ain't really in the bag. And honestly, this game today, I'm kind of pumped to talk to you about this game, Adam, because this game had a little bit of everything mixed into it. There were some people missing. There were people that started the game but didn't finish the game. So we're going to have a lot to get into. But quickly, for those of you joining us here as we're doing this about 10 to 15 minutes after the game just concluded, appreciate you guys tuning in, whether it's on Twitter, YouTube, wherever it might be. Please go ahead, fill up those chats. We'll try to get to some of those. And if you want to make sure that your question gets addressed while we're on this live stream, please go ahead, especially, well, I think only if you're on YouTube, go ahead and utilize that super chat feature. Adam and I will make sure that we guarantee to get to those while we're on this stream. But Adam, should we just get into a morning box score and get this thing going?
Yeah, man, let's do this.
All right, man. Well, here we go. Let's jump into a morning box score. The Boston Celtics win 110 to 106, once again completing a season series sweep of the Miami Heat. Of note in this game, no Jimmy Butler from the jump, dealing with a death in the family. So never like to see that. So we do wish the best to Jimmy Butler and his family. But for the Heat that were in the game today, let's start with Bam Adebayo. He had a big night tonight, 22 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists for him. He was 7 of 18 from the field. Tyler Hero with a really, really massive second half. Overall, 10 of 21, 4 of 12 from 3. He had 24 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. 15 points for Duncan Robinson off the bench. We'll talk more about him as we get into this. 15 points for Caleb Martin, who always seems to kind of find a way when he plays the Celtics. Not playing the Celtics, you don't hear his name quite as often. Playing the Celtics, expect Caleb Martin to be heard from. Let's swing it over to the winning team, and let's look at the Boston Celtics. This game is going to start with Jayson Tatum, who was 1 assist away from a triple-double. He finishes with 26 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, 11 of 20 overall. Jaylen Brown, 8 of 16 from the field, 20 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists for him. Did have 6 turnovers, though, so definitely something to keep an eye on. Kristaps Porzingis, who at one point did leave the game, but then did come back, so nothing too much to worry about there. 8 of 14 from the field, 7 of 9 from the free throw line, 25 points, 9 rebounds for him. Drew Holiday, really big second half, 15 points for him. Adam, this was a game that, you know, especially towards the end, really felt it had all the DNA of a Celtics Heat playoff matchup, right? It got real gritty. Obviously, you know, the Heat were without Jimmy Butler. Then Josh Richardson hurts his shoulder in the first half. Second half, Terry Rozier, and now maybe that was the end of the first. Can't remember exactly when that happened. I think it was the second half. Terry Rozier goes down and he leaves. And of course, the Heat, as they do, they're like they're cockroaches, man. You can't kill them. They keep finding a way to hang around. They make this, you know, into a real close game. Obviously, the Celtics pull away here, 110 to 106 late. But what was the first thing, you know, knowing that I know you usually have 2 watches in before you're ever going to speak on a game? So one watch it, just initial takeaway. What was the first thing that jumped out to you from this game today?
experimentation to begin the game. Like, there's some zone. They ran a few different actions, but I think overall the only thing that really jumped out to me was that the Heat still find a way to just be a pain in the ass, right? Like that Bam fondle of Kristaps balls was a clear like an example of the type of plays that you're going to come up against. And I'm not saying they play dirty; they just play hard and they play
physical.
They play within a rule base that you're bending the rules, but you're not breaking the rules. And I'm completely fine with that because growing up, that was my mantra. If I bend the rules, I'm not going to get in trouble. If I break the rules, then I'm on punishment. So bend the rules, I can live with that. But yeah, I think that's the main thing that jumped out to me. This was one of those games where it felt like a lot happened, but not much actually happened.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, right? Like it feels like there's more takeaways, but there really isn't too many new takeaways that come from this game. I think early on, to your point of experimentation, one thing was, especially in that first quarter, the KP difference, right? Just the offensive execution for the Celtics going through Kristaps Porzingis is something that, when we think about 3 of the last 4 years, these teams being in the conference finals against each other, that was an element just not there, right? That's a brand new element that we've seen. That's a big reason why the Celtics go 3-0 against the Heat here, in the regular season. And then you flip it over, and this is something I want to kind of pick your brain on here for a minute. The Celtics utilized a lot of zone in this game at different times. More so, I think, in the first half than they did in the second half. But they utilized a lot of zone at different times. And I think I saw at one point in the broadcast, they highlighted the Celtics are now 20th in the amount of time that they use zone. And I believe, the last 4 or 5 years before this, we must have been 29, 30th because Celtics never, ever played zone. So that was a big thing that me, you, and Greg have talked about coming into the year, that Joe Mazzulla was going to have a curveball. Joe Mazzulla was going to have a second option to go to. And we've seen a couple different zones that they utilized. And, they talked about it on the broadcast too, where sometimes you kind of got to live with the growing pains here in the regular season, knowing that this is ultimately the long game that we're playing. We got to get the reps in, especially versus a team that we know we might want to utilize it. How did you view the Celtics zone defense in this game?
Yeah, it wasn't great. Like, it wasn't terrible either. I feel like there was some possessions where things flowed a bit more, and then there was some possessions where it just felt clunky. I think that's the best way to kind of describe it. People still aren't 100% sure where their zone, like where their kind of zone ends and where the next person's pick up. You can see that sometimes it's Drew that's pointing it out and barking where to go. Sometimes it's Al. Sometimes it's Tatum. It's a work in progress, and there's still an entire. As far I know that it's not technically half a season now because you've obviously played so many games. What are we on? 53 games now. 41 and 12. Yeah, 53. Yeah. So we're past the halfway point by over 10 games. But I always view the All-Star game as kind of like that halfway point. So we've still got essentially a full second half of the season to keep running zone, keep implementing it, getting data, finding out what works, finding out what doesn't, go back into the film room, figure shit out. So by the time the postseason comes, I'm going to be quite confident in this zone. I like the 2-1-2. I like the 2-1-2 spy. I like the 2-3 zone. I even like the 2-2-1 press. Like, all of them, just keep running them, keep figuring that out. And I want you to screw up. That's because
they have to dig
mistakes.
Right. This is the only way this is going to become a tool in the playoffs, is if they dig in. And to your point, they've talked a lot about Drew Holiday is kind of the quarterback of that defense. He's in the middle. And a lot of this, I think Greg's been big on this. A lot of this is to help prevent, like, when a team can kind of snake the screener. Right. And then all of a sudden, oh, wait, Drew Holiday is going to be in the middle, making all the calls, jumping the route, basically, so that you don't have that same ability. But it is going to take, it's a lot of communication. And even Mazzulla in some of the, when they had him mic'd up today, talked about, we got to remember, like, to stay with those shooters or make sure that we know where those shooters are. And that's still getting lost at times. But, I do think it's for this team, like, they need to have that variance, right, to be able to throw different looks at you. And so I'm with you. I like that they're continuing to stick with it and just kind of build through the growing pains. Another part of this game that I want to talk about, and this has been something that I think has come up really over the last, it's come up a lot throughout these last several seasons, but I just want to use these last 3 games. The Celtics playing with a lead in the fourth quarter and letting these games get within, Haywood Highsmith missed 3 today that would have given the Heat a lead. The Wizards climbed back in the other night. The Hawks game, they were a Sadiq Bey Sadiq Bey wide open 3 from being a 2-point game after having, a 12-point lead with, just a couple of minutes left to go. And, my question to you, Adam, is what do you think it is about, the Celtics once again had a 10-point lead early on in the fourth quarter in this game. And then, like I said, Haywood Highsmith had a 3-point shot with about a minute and a half. Maybe I'd have to double check the exact timestamp on it for them to take the lead. What are you seeing from this team about not being able to kind of, put a team away earlier than when they should and letting some of these games get close? Because when you get to the postseason, remember, there's no Jimmy Butler in this game. There's no Terry Rozier in this game. And Josh Richardson is fully capable if he's having a good game of Spoelstra, giving him the nod to close a game as well. Like, without those key guys, when you get to the playoffs and those guys are all available, these are the type of games that could really bite the Celtics. What are you seeing as the biggest issue in those moments?
I don't think it's a concern at the moment. I think if you look back at the season as a whole, they've put teams away consistently, like that middle stretch, that 15 to 35 games, that kind of stretch there. They were burying teams. Didn't matter how big the lead was, they were kept pushing and pushing, like coming off the back of the IST, the in-season tournament. Now we're getting towards like the All-Star break. There seems to be a little bit more will rely on talent. They're taking possessions off. Yeah. We've got a comment here that we're not communicating down the stretch. I'm going to pick it up actually. Sagging off from the point of attack. We're not picking up switches high enough. Yep, all the pickup points actions here are very fair. I agree with everything he's saying here. And I do genuinely think that it's just we're done. We're ready for a break.
Yeah, and that's for me, that's to a degree, that's kind of where I've landed as well, just because this is the equivalent of the dog days of summer. This is the dog days of the NBA season. And that's why it's like at the end of the day, a win is a win, right? Right now, it's just about getting wins. It's about, piling up those wins. And, right now the Celtics, I think, have either 5 and a 5.5 game lead, in the Eastern Conference, as we got 2 more games before we do get to a week-long break. And that's kind of that reset that you said, right? So when they come back, now it's, you're going to have 30-ish games, maybe a little sub 30 games, whatever the math comes out to there, where it's like, all right, now this is the time where we got to be progressing towards number 1 being healthy and number 2 being fully locked in, for when that can
shift.
Exactly. So I do think that is part of it. And certainly we've seen that with the, it's been highlighted the last couple nights, the net rating of the Celtics starting 5, which was like plus 19 up until January 1st. And then January plus this first week and a half here in February, they actually have a negative net rating. So I do think it's something to keep an eye on, but I'm with you. It's too hard. It's hard to get too concerned about it right now. Going back to just looking at this game, one of the players I wanted to focus on for a minute here, let's talk about Jaylen Brown. Because I thought Jaylen Brown had a pretty fascinating fourth quarter. A lot of highs, some lows, and I don't really, it kind of evened out in the end, right? You had the incident with Duncan Robinson, which you can give me your thoughts on that. I think at the end of the day, the flagrant 1 call was right. It probably was excessive, but I also don't think it was, like maliciously dirty. And, it is what it is. It happens in an NBA game. So you get that. You get the unbelievable, Jaylen's talked about wanting to be all NBA defense. Go clip that, defensive possession with him and Bam down the post at about 6.5 minutes left, where he's just stonewalling him. That's the Jaylen Brown that you want to see on defense. You're talking about having a dog. Like that's that version of Jaylen Brown right there, right? And then you get Jaylen Brown with a massive offensive rebound shortly after that, after the Celtics were starting to get stagnant in that area that I just was talking about, where they have this lead, ends up in a Kristaps Porzingis 3, which they really needed. Then you get a traveling call. Then you get 2 missed free throws, but then you get another big 3 with about a minute and a half, 2 minutes left for him to close out the game. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on Jaylen Brown tonight, who I thought had, especially in the fourth, a very fascinating game.
Who said we wouldn't get the Marcus Smart experience anymore? Who said?
You think Jaylen Brown's taking that mantle?
Nah, just this one game. I tell you what.
It was a little Marcusian, Smartian. I don't know what the Marquesian. There you go. That's probably better.
There we go. I don't know. We're just making up words at this point. We're basically back to optionality. Greg will be upset. I'm only joking, Greg. We love you. I think the thing that stood out to me first, and I want to point this out, is the last few games he hasn't been the featured guy offensively that he was earlier in the season. I don't know whether that's by design. I don't know whether that's just him kind of saving himself for these fourth quarter moments. but that's noticeable to me. Brown's better when he gets in a rhythm early. You see Kristaps kind of being that featured scorer the last couple of games instead of JB. And obviously what I mean there is coming into the game being the primary guy in the first. But that was JB's bread and butter all season, and it kind of carried him into the rest of the quarters. Now we're waiting for him to come alive, because coming into the third, I was like, man, JB's having a quiet game. It's not that he's been bad, he's just not really been involved. Then I feel like what we saw in the fourth was kind of forcing that involvement a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like defensively, he's going to be there. He wants to be that defensive player of the year type, or defensive team type guy. He wants to be banging with teams' primary options. He's proved he can be that guy. Offensively, I do feel like some of the shots were forced. I do feel like sometimes he was calling his own number when he could have drove and kicked. But that's because I don't think he was in the rhythm that he would have been in if he was being featured in the first quarter. Overall, though, that was one of his better quarters in the game. I think like we actually felt he was there. Like, I'm fine with it.
I think it's pretty interesting the point you bring up, and it is definitely something over the last
3-4
games, where Kristaps has been the go-to. Now, some of that is probably matchup dependent, right? You go back to the Grizzlies G League team that they rolled out. Then I believe it was the Hawks after that when they had no Capella, I believe, in that game. The Wizards had just traded Daniel Gafford at the trade deadline. They don't really have anyone. And then here with Miami, they've got Bam, but also that's kind of where KP is ultimately weaponized. If you want to put Bam on KP, okay, KP is going to hang out 3 feet beyond the 3-point line. Or do you want to have Bam as your roamer and you're going to try to, maybe put him on Drew Holiday or somebody, and then you're going to leave Caleb Martin against Kristaps? And so once again, I do wonder if it's matchup dependent, but that has been, we've always said JB's the opener, right? That is usually, if JB is going to shoot the ball 15, 16 times in the game, probably about 7, 8 of those coming in the first quarter. Typically, right?
And he's pressuring the rim, and like that was kind of the biggest change for me. I feel like he felt empowered, or it appeared like he felt empowered to play a game that really suited his skill set. He was hunting those spots in the mid range. He was hunting that mid post. He was driving the lane, getting to the rim, and I do feel like he's a different player now that he's not, like, over these 4 games where he's not being featured in that first quarter. We're not seeing that same aggression throughout the game, and it's working wonders for Kristaps. But I think that you can put Kristaps in a position to be successful at any point because of the mismatches he can create, because of the spacing he can give you. Whereas I think Brown, he needs that kind of like, let me come in, let me punch you in the mouth. Now I'm feeling good, and I'm going to run with things all through the game. So that's just been like a longer takeaway for me, like a 4-game, 5-game sample size. But then when you come to the fourth quarter, and there are some shots where I'm like, man, he's pressing a little bit on that shot selection. He's not cutting as quickly, or he's not seeing the floor as fluidly as what he can. Part of me looks back and then I'm like, well, he isn't being in that role that he's been in all season, but we're expecting the same that we've been expecting, that we've been getting. And if you're not in that role, we can't get what we expect, and then that's unfair. You have to recontextualize your expectations. So for what he's been playing, like the role he's been playing, I thought that was what you got was what you're going to get with him in that role.
Yeah, and then let's go to his counterpart here in the Jays tandem here. Let's go to Jayson Tatum, who tonight, came 1 assist away from having a triple-double. Once again, 26 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, 11 of 20 from the field, 2 of 6 from the 3-point line. Only got to the free throw line twice, but it was a pretty low free throw shooting game all around if your name wasn't Bam Adebayo or Kristaps Porzingis. Those were basically the only guys that were getting to the line for either team tonight. But what'd you see out of Tatum tonight in his performance in Miami?
Elite level passing, elite level court vision. I like to call it processing speed. We see an action, process it, perceive how it's going to go and move on. Scoring was great. I think his mid-range after dribble scoring has just become so fluid, so cash. And I like that about both Tatum and Brown. I think their mid-range games are so underrated. Everyone's like, oh, don't shoot mid-range. No, the mid-range is a bad shot if you're a bad mid-range shooter. If you're a good mid-range shooter, take that shit. Rim pressure was good. Obviously, he's a decent help defender. Sometimes I worry about his point of attack. I don't think he was too bad in this game. Screening was good. He was attacking well out of doubles, breaking down guys off the double, shooting through doubles when he split the defense. it was a big game for him, man. I think it like the rebound. The thing is, yeah, okay, my thoughts are all over the place. This is what happens when I only watch the game once.
No, this is great. This is what we don't always
contextual.
get. We don't get the unfiltered, unhinged Adam Taylor immediately after a game. This is what the people want. This is what the people need. Gets them going.
This is what the people want. So I'm just going through it now, looking like 26, 10, 9. That's a quiet Tatum game. It's a good Tatum game, but it's quiet. 26 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists. The fact that we're looking at this like, yeah, it's a good stat line. No, that's a great stat line. It's just because we've become so accustomed to it being Tatum that we're like, it's okay. I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, so I'm just pulling up here. This is Jayson Tatum's shot chart from today, right? And, I think to your point, this is going to highlight like all of these mid-range or just outside of, just outside of the paint shots. I think for me, this is where I would love to see Jayson Tatum live more. You see a lot of shots at the rim. So, I mean, even though he didn't get to the foul line, he was living in the paint. He was living in the paint and just outside the paint. And especially versus Miami, where going back to what Kristaps brings, where if they're going to put Bam on him, attack the rim. They don't have there's no one else there at the rim. Like of course they're going to play tough. They're going to play physical. They'll contest, but Tatum's too strong and too big. Like it's not going to be a matchup that can really be stopped. So I think for me today, anytime Tatum in a matchup like this, if he were to have settled more for some of those, pull up or off the dribble threes, which I think, maybe one or two of these, but you're going to live with that because Tatum can always hit those shots. So that's always kind of the frustrating part sometimes is like Tatum, there's times where I don't want him to take that quote unquote pull up shot, but I know he can make it. But today, I don't think he was reliant on it, which is the biggest part for me when it comes to his process. And you saw that today, that he was getting downhill, he was getting into the lane, he was getting his touches from, the low post, the mid post. And then because he is becoming such a better passer, which I think they said after the game, 9 of 17 were Celtics teammates off of Jayson Tatum passes. This is what you want to see out of a Jayson Tatum shot chart, right? It's something along the lines of what he gave you tonight.
I'm in love with the mid-range game that we're seeing from these two guys. I really am, because I think it's opened up everything else. The Celtics are playing a lot more out of the post in terms of creation. You're seeing like that post-entry passing, and like I like to kind of call it like the V passing sequence. You have an invert, you have a pass into the post, and then it kicks out to a shooter elsewhere from the post itself. When you're running an offense like that, and then sometimes it goes into the post, but it doesn't come back out, but you can't double. Like you put Tatum in the post, you can't send a second person.
Yeah.
You know what
I
mean?
If you can, you get burnt. You're
getting screwed.
I think it was in the third quarter. One of my favorite possessions of the game. They got the ball to Tatum. He goes baseline. I think there's either 2 or 3 Miami Heat defenders on him. Swings it around. You get it from Pritchard, I believe, to White, then to Holiday, pump fake. He gets a 3-point shot on the wing. And that was just a beautiful side-to-side paint touch, double come, C2, C3, kick it, that. And that's the type of trouble that you're going to run into now with Jayson Tatum as he continues to evolve. One thing I was thinking about the other day, and I don't even know if I'm where I'm at with how I think about this, because to your point, you said this earlier, like 26 points. That's pretty whatever. That's a fine Jayson Tatum game, but also then you add in the 10 rebounds, 9 assists. Now it becomes a really good Jayson Tatum game.
It becomes mighty fine.
I like that. But here's my question. So he's only scored, and points, as we know, are not everything. But when you get down to crunch time in the postseason, there are going to be some nights where you're going to need Jayson Tatum to be the Jayson Tatum, 35 to 50 point guy. Like that's just a fact. There's gonna be a couple nights when you get down to it that you need that. Because we've seen that less from Tatum this year, do you think that's something that you still need to see out of him a little bit more as we hit this stretch run with 30-ish games left or so?
Sorry, I had a bang in my house, like someone just decided to kick the door off. I think we need to see it, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Got a home invasion coming here?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I got the hammer by me anyway. It's all good. I never move rooms without it. Yeah, I think you're going to need a couple of games, 4, maybe 5, and I don't think they all need to come between now and the end of the season. I think between now and the end of the first round is more logical to me. I also think that it's different this year because you have so many scoring options.
Right. And this is why I don't want to commit to like, I need this from Tatum, because he's doing so many other things. And this team is so different than what it was, the last 2 years going for the NBA Finals.
Like the way I'm looking at it is you might have 1, maybe 2 games in the postseason where you need a 50-point game from someone. Whether that's Tatum or not is going to depend on multiple factors, right? But he is the most logical guy to expect it from because he's Tatum.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see at least 2 50-point games between now and the end of the first round from someone. I'm not going to say from Tatum because there's 3 stars on
You
this
got 3
team,
guys
4,
that are
5.
capable to do it. But I think there's
Yeah.
3 guys that theoretically could have a 50-point game, right? Or have
Quite comfortably.
and 50 is a lot. Let's just even say 40, right? Because 40, you know what I mean? Like that's a massive night. I mean, despite the scoring boom that we see night to night, where apparently like 50, 60-point games just don't cut it anymore. You got to put up 70, but 40 points.
Do you reckon you could have a 60-40-20 night?
Who? Like just anybody in the NBA?
No, like I'm on about 60 for Tatum, 40 for KP, 20 for Brown in a game.
I mean, that's 100. That's 120 points from 3. For a second, I almost was like, "Yeah, I think that's possible." The way out, it's 120 points. I don't. That's a. I don't
know. If one guy can drop 70, it's a lot of points. It's a lot of points. If it's gonna happen, it's gonna be against.
That's like what was it? Was it Grant who was like, took a picture with Luka after he had 73 and was like 81 points in one picture or something like that. You know what I mean?
Something like that. And then while he was wearing JT's sneakers and
and then they kicked him the hell out of the team.
Luka's taking this picture like, dude, I fucking hate this guy. Because not wearing my sneakers.
Right.
Fuck off. Nah, seriously though, jokes aside, I don't mind who scores the 50. I don't even think there's going to be a serious need consistently.
Yeah, it's a little bit. This is why I wasn't even sure how to like even broach this topic because it does feel a bit arbitrary to me. Like, oh, Tatum has to have another 40-point game. Like, I know Tatum can have a 40-point game. I've seen Tatum have 50-point games. It's not that I don't know that he can do it, but it's just one of those things that when you see a postseason run from any type of championship team, you're going to be like, oh, remember those couple games that Steph Curry had or that Kevin Durant had. Even when you look at like those Warriors teams that. Once again, that was another team that had 3 guys that could clearly go for 40 to 50 points when Klay Thompson was still obviously at his peak. And you still had to have those games from those guys at times in that run. And so the Celtics are obviously not quite as good as those level of Warriors teams, but they do have firepower in the sense of having, 3 guys that can be that explosive. So I don't know. It's something I think we can circle back to as we get a little bit later in the season here.
I just want to put this out as well. Like, it's enjoyable watching one of your guys go for 50.
Oh, it's
like,
a blast.
It's a blast. Like, so I'm like,
I was there for Game 7. That was unbelievable.
All right, there's no need for that. I'm only joking. But yeah, it's unbelievable. It's fun. It's a memory. It's a moment, right? You're creating moments. You're creating memorable moments. So from that aspect, I want to see that shit.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But
I think we'll keep an eye on this. I think as we go through, like I said, it's something that I didn't even think is. I don't even know how I feel about it, but it's just something I've been noticing more. Is like I wonder, is this something that it feels like we need? I see a comment here that when Tatum plays like that, it can take out the offensive flow, but. That's part of the reason he's not going for it. He's not forcing that, right? Because he doesn't need to with this team that they have out here. But, Celtics sweep the season series with the Heat. I'll be honest, doesn't mean much to me because I still think Miami's a terrifying team to come up against in the postseason if they're healthy. When you mix Spo in, you get Jimmy Butler back. This is still going to be a team that, I'm just never going to count them out. No matter how many times I think I should, I never will ever again. And as long as they have Jimmy, Bam, and Spo, I'm gonna be looking twice, maybe even 3 times at the Miami Heat. But Adam, before we wrap up out of here, I know that you and I did a lot of talk about Xavier Tillman, one of the new pickups for the Celtics here over this last week. One guy I haven't really heard your thoughts on yet. Don't know if you've dove into the tape quite yet. We haven't seen either Xavier Tillman or Jaden Springer with the team yet, both dealing with some minor injuries. My guess is Tillman we probably won't see until after the All-Star break. Springer. Maybe we'll make an appearance this week in one of these Brooklyn games. TBD. His injury seems to be a little less serious, so we'll see. But did you have any thoughts on Jaden Springer or anything that's maybe coming out on Celtics blog this week?
Yeah, so I haven't seen much of Jaden Springer yet. While I'm talking, everybody on YouTube, we can do a quick Q&A if you've got the time, but it's super chats only. Send in those super chats, baby. I haven't seen enough Jaden Springer yet. I'm going to watch some film. It just hasn't been I haven't found the time to do so yet. From what I've gathered so far, just from the little bit I have watched, great point of attack defender, strong, can slash off the ball like an off-ball slasher. I'm not really high on his ball handling yet, but I haven't seen enough to say that definitively.
Yeah,
I think he's just going to be a really high IQ defensive guy, and you know how that starts and where that can lead you to once you're on the court consistently and you're trusted to play minutes. Everything else can develop in time. So yeah, I mean, the reporting that came out from Adam Himmelsbach was like Sam Cassell and was it Lashbury?
I can't remember. I know there was two guys on the staff that were
Cassell,
like, take a look at Springer.
Yeah, and they're like, yo, bring this motherfucker here. So yeah, I'm down on him. Celtics blog. There'll probably be some stuff. There's going to be some buyout stuff. I'll probably do. There'll be takeaways tomorrow.
Yeah.
There'll be some stuff over on Celtics Chronicles. Go and hit that up on Substack. Type in the Celtics Chronicles. Hit subscribe. Show me some love. And then we'll be back here, man. We've got some buyout stuff coming up tomorrow. We got tomorrow, Tuesday. We've got a few days.
We'll have basically our own buyout chronicles here. We'll be highlighting a couple individuals here over the next couple of days as we get into the All-Star break. There's going to be a full week off of games. Of course, we'll have some coverage on the Jays in the All-Star game and Jaylen Brown trying to bring home a dunk title back to Boston. So that will be fun to talk about. But before we sign off here, Adam, do you have one specific buyout guy? And I'm still kind of gathering the list on my end, but is there one specific buyout guy that you're really excited for us to talk about this week?
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about how we've got memberships open for $5 each to sign up to those memberships. I'm kind of in the mind where I'd want an extra backup guard.
Okay.
So Kojo kind of sticks out to me.
Okay. Corey Joseph. All right, I see that.
That kind of makes sense to me. That's where I'm at the moment. If I'm not really on the Gallo train, I feel like that's kind of all name, no game type of let's bring a former Celtics back. If they do it, I'm all for it, for the vibes, for setting things straight after he got hurt and then you trade.
I just want the fits. Back. I just want to see, him and KP when they're out of the game, rocking those fits side by side. Them Europeans got some style, man.
And they'll be in union, so it'll be the European Union. I'm European, so I can get away with that. Yeah, I like guard. I like a guard at the minute, not because I want to replace Peyton Pritchard, because I think he's doing great. I think he played really well in this game, but because I'm like, hey, if Drew or Derek or Pritchard suffer an injury, the guard depth is kind of where I'm most like, what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? You got to bring Jaylen down into a 2. You got to slide Jaylen down. Now everything kind of moves. It's weird. No, I'd like Corey Joseph can be reliable off the bench, and he was playing a deep bench role in Golden State. So that'll kind of be where I'm leaning at the moment.
All right. Well, we're going to have a bunch of different guys that we're highlighting. So be on the lookout for that. If you want to see that, it's all going to be mostly on our YouTube. That's probably not going to really be hitting the podcast audio feed. So if you do want to follow along, we'll promote it across our socials, but you're mostly going to have to tune in to the YouTube channel. So once again, here we go, getting a little bit of love down here.
Appreciate you. Love you. The Celtics Chronicles.
And make sure you follow the Celtics Chronicles. We'll have a lot more content coming up this week as we lead into the All-Star break. Celtics back-to-back against Brooklyn Tuesday, Wednesday. We'll have some coverage for you this week. That's going to do it for this one. Celtics take down the Heat 110-106. Adam, always a pleasure. Glad I get to share this matinee moment with you. And with that, we're going to send you out with our guy, Greg, and his band down here in Austin, Texas. They are Black Sheep Optimists. We will catch y'all later. Peace.
Every time I get this high, I lose my mind. It don't take much no more until I hit the floor. Every time I get this high, it's you I find. It don't take much no more until I'm at your door.
You cut me to my core, baby. What can I say? You got me on the floor. You know I came to play. I know I shouldn't, but you seem to take my pain.